Thank you, Attorney General. Order on both sides. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question, as a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, is to a fellow servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, the Attorney General, Senator Brandis. As the Attorney-General would be aware, one of the most serious issues facing a vast number of Australians daily is being able to afford legal representation in the court system, and particularly in the family law courts, including the Federal Circuit Court. Is the Senator aware it is estimated that legal aid agencies require an urgent additional funding injection in the order of $200 million to be able to provide to needy litigants a decent level of legal representation? What additional funding has the government made available to meet this funding deficit? If they have not made additional funding available in this crisis area, when will they?
The Attorney-General, Senator Brandis.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Senator Roberts, and I know you, like your leader, Senator Hanson, through you, Mr. President, take a deep and serious interest in this issue. I hear interjections coming from the other side. I would have thought that the way in which we deal with family breakdown, just families and relationships in distress, women and children facing family violence, is not something that ought to be the subject of partisan interjection and political point scoring. But so, Senator Roberts, it's a deeply serious question you raise, and I thank you for raising it. There is pressure on the family law system. There is no doubt about that. And there is pressure on the legal assistance budget. But I can tell you where that pressure comes from, primarily, Senator Roberts. 4 years ago, and I take your interjection, Senator Collins, 4 years ago, in the final budget of the Labor government, the former Attorney-General, Mr Dreyfus, who continues to haunt this Senate today, apparently like the ghost of Christmas past, Mr Dreyfus announced a 4-year funding program which would terminate in 2017. That is what members of the sector refer to as the Dreyfus funding cliff. The Dreyfus funding cliff. So the expiry of that program on the 30th of June 2017 is not the result of any decision taken by me or any decision taken by this government. It is the result of a decision taken by Mr Mark Dreyfus in his submission to the 2013, the final Labor budget. During this government, we have announced a national partnership agreement for legal funding that provides $1.62 billion.
Thank you, Attorney-General. The time for answering the question has expired. A supplementary question, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. In terms of the distribution of such funding to community legal aid, Aboriginal legal aid and to legal aid generally, would the Attorney-General advise whether or not he has advised those bodies their funding was to be reduced by 30% in the next allocation?
Attorney-General.
Well, Senator Roberts, the only decision that this government has made has been through the National Partnership Agreement, which provides, as I was saying in my answer to your initial question, $1.62 billion over 5 years to legal aid commissions, CLCs and Indigenous legal assistance providers, which will increase the funding in nominal terms and maintain it in real terms. It will maintain it in real terms. The only cut of which I have had to advise members of the sector is the cuts arising from the Dreyfus funding cliff as a result of a decision in the last Labor budget, when Mr Dreyfus took a submission to the Labor Government's Budget Committee, however it was called, and decided that additional funding would terminate in 2017.
Thank you, Attorney-General. Senator Roberts, a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Has the Attorney-General and/or his department conducted an actuarial analysis of the resultant additional costs caused by the delays at the callovers due to the extended time required by the judiciary in having to give advice to self-represented parties on such matters as procedure or their failure to comply with prior orders and the resultant adjournments and further hearings? Firstly, to litigants who may be legally represented whose hearings are consequently delayed or their hearings callovers, And secondly, the additional costs incurred by the court system
Thank
resulting
you,
from these
Senator
delays?
Roberts. The time for asking the question has expired. Attorney General.
Well, Senator Roberts, I'll come to your question immediately, but if I may, let me just say this in 2 sentences. This government maintained legal assistance funding in real terms. The only reductions in the amount of money going to the sector are as a result of the funding cliff decided upon by Mr Dreyfus in the last Labor budget. Now, coming directly to the subject matter of your question, Senator Roberts, the problem of self-represented litigants is a problem with which judges and practitioners and everyone in the family law system is extremely familiar. That has been a feature of the system, by the way, for many years. It is why it is desirable to ensure, as the government has done, that legal assistance funding is maintained at real levels. It's why it was such a disastrous decision to build into future legal assistance funding the funding cliff that the last Labor Attorney-General, Mr Mark
Thank you,
Dreyfus,
Attorney
did.
General. The time for answering the question has expired. Senator